So 10 games to go and one of the tightest Premier League title races we've ever seen. And though we are used to Manchester City and Liverpool battling it out at this time of the season, there's now a third additional factor with Arsenal involved to make it even more exciting than it usually is. And because we're in this final international break of the season, I thought it was a good time to maybe take stock of where the three teams are up to and try and make a judgment on who's going to go on and lift the trophy in May. And as I look to do that, I've put together some figures and some graphics to see where the team's strengths and weaknesses are, what teams they've got left to play, and how that could play a vital factor in terms of who goes on to lift the Premier League title this season. And of course, I'm going to ask you to get involved and let me know in the comments what you think. Where do you think the title race is going? Maybe write your comment now before you watch the video, and then see if your mind is changed by what I've got to put forward to you in terms of what these sides have got left. And I think a good place to start in terms of judging the title race is, of course, the Premier League table as it stands. And a few things really to point out there. Now, of course, just 1 point separating three teams at this stage of the season is absolutely incredible, really, isn't it? It speaks to the level of quality shown, but just how tight this Premier League title race is. And a couple of things to mention from this that could be factors in the run-in. I mean, one thing that leaps out immediately is you look at Liverpool there. They're the side that's lost the fewest games, just the 2 defeats. Is their ability to avoid defeat, is that going to be a huge factor in this title race in the final few weeks? Is their ability to maybe grind out a draw in a game where they might look like they would be beaten? Is that going to be helpful to them? And also, have a look at Arsenal's goal difference there, 46 to Liverpool's 39 and Manchester City's 35. Now, the question marks in terms of Arteta and coaching attacks in the past, but they absolutely have answered those, particularly in recent weeks. They've built up a huge cushion there in terms of goal difference with some huge wins that they've had in recent weeks. And the fact they've got a 7 advantage over Liverpool and an 11 advantage over City at this time of the season, if they can keep that goal difference advantage up, that can be worth an extra point, can't it? I mean, if the season ends today, then Arsenal are the champions ahead of Liverpool on the basis of all those goals they've scored in recent games. So could be a factor and an interesting one to bear in mind. But I would say with it being so tight at the moment, as I say, just the 1 point between the three teams, then maybe it's too tight really to make any judgments on the basis of how the table stands at the moment. But it is interesting to have a look, and I think what will probably be a more key factor in this is what have the sides got left for them in the 10 games that are ahead. They are the 10 games that are going to decide probably who is the title winners at the end of the season. So it's worth having a look at all three, their fixture list that they've got coming up after this international break. Now, one thing immediately jumps out to me in this when you look at that, and is the fact that obviously this first weekend after the international break that Arsenal face Manchester City at Manchester City, while Liverpool have got Brighton at home. Now that is an opportunity, if the result goes the right way for Liverpool, whether that be a draw or a Manchester City win, and then Liverpool win their game against Brighton, they will be the ones who are in control of the Premier League title race, and that it will give them control with 9 games to go and then a 9-game shootout. They know if they pick up more points across those 9 games, then they will be Premier League champions. So they'll be keeping an eye on what's going on at the Etihad Stadium. As much as they need to win their game against Brighton, it's absolutely crucial what goes on in that one at the Etihad between Arsenal and Manchester City. So that is going to be an interesting weekend, certainly to start after this international break. And then a couple of other things really to get into around this, what the sides have got left, and you'll note that all three sides have got to face Tottenham. Now that's a tough one. Tottenham in top 4 contention this season, looking really good under Ange Postecoglou, aren't they? Although they had a poor result last time out, they've still been a really, really strong side this season. And I think Liverpool will look at that and maybe think they've got a slight advantage in that Spurs have got to come to Anfield. So, when you're facing a side of that quality, you definitely rather face them at home than away. And Arsenal and City have both got to go to Spurs, where they are quite strong. So for Arsenal, of course, that is a North London derby as well. So adds that extra spice, gives Spurs an extra reason to want to beat them. So that is worth factoring in as a game that could be decisive. Really, Spurs could be the kingmakers, couldn't they? Could have a real influence. And in fact, there's another side who've got that possibility as well. A couple of other sides. One of them is Aston Villa, again, another side who are going really, really well this season. They're playing really well in top 4 contention. So that is a big one. And the fact is that Liverpool have got to go away to Villa, where again they've been really strong this season. Arsenal and Manchester City only got to face Villa at home, but it's still a difficult fixture, but again, something that maybe favours Arsenal and City over Liverpool in that factor. And again, another side who all three teams have got to face is Brighton. Again, Liverpool maybe got the slight advantage on this one in that they've got Brighton at home. Of course, that, as I've mentioned, is the first game after the international break, and then Arsenal and Manchester City both got to go away to Brighton. Now, I know Brighton's form is a little bit up and down at times, but when they're really on it, and particularly at home, they can be such a difficult side to face. So again, they could have a huge influence in terms of where that title race goes and who is the victors in May. Another key fixture I think that's worth pointing out in amongst there as well is that Arsenal and Liverpool have both got Manchester United away. Now, obviously, we know for Liverpool how difficult a fixture that is. They lost there in the FA Cup last time out, and Manchester United would absolutely love, wouldn't they, to throw a spanner in the works in terms of Liverpool winning the title. They'd love to deny them that. So I think that is a really difficult one for Liverpool, as we already know. And similar with Arsenal, that rivalry is there with Manchester United, isn't it? A real Premier League rivalry, and so, you know, Arsenal won't want Manchester United vice versa actually. Manchester United won't want Arsenal to be coming into Old Trafford and taking 3 points that could potentially propel them towards the title. So I do think that again is going to be another factor. And just to mention from a Liverpool-centric point of view as well, Everton away, always a tough one for Liverpool in title races. That one, they always make it difficult. Seen so many 0-0s and difficult draws at Everton down the years when Liverpool have been involved in title races. So absolutely, even though Everton are struggling a little bit this season, that is going to be a difficult fixture for Liverpool. So I think that's one to factor in for them. Now, I've just gone through the fixtures there and had a little look at what I think is, you know, which are the tricky ones for Arsenal, Liverpool and City, and where they might slip up and where the big considerations for difficult fixtures for them. But fortunately, there's quite an easy way to work out who's got the most difficult fixtures remaining, and that is looking at the points per game that the teams that these sides will be facing have picked up so far over the season. So I'll just pop up the graphic now to show you, and you can look at that and see that clearly Arsenal have got the most difficult run-in of the three. 1.63 points per game picked up by their opposition so far this season. Manchester City next with 1.52, so a slightly less tricky run-in for Manchester City, but still some difficult fixtures in there. In fact, one I didn't mention for them is Crystal Palace away. I always feel like they have a tricky one there, don't they? So that's an interesting one. And finally, Liverpool have got on paper what should be the easiest run-in of all three title contenders, so a huge boost for Liverpool in that regard. They've got 1.37 points per game picked up by their opposition so far this season, so that suggests to me that Liverpool have got a slight advantage in the run-in, the slightly easier fixture list, and they will hope that will really come into and be a crucial factor in this and really help them get over the line in the title race. Now, one thing I want to mention before I move away from the fixtures actually is the fact that another consideration for Arsenal and Manchester City, and something they maybe got to have in the back of the minds, is if they get through their quarter-finals in the Champions League. Now, Manchester City facing Real Madrid and Arsenal facing Bayern Munich, then they will face each other in the semi-finals of the Champions League, and they've got to fit those semi-finals in between some of those fixtures there. So, you know, huge games, aren't they, those semi-finals of the Champions League against each other. They'll have all the thoughts will be on that, and they've got to try and focus on two fronts of trying to win the Premier League up against Liverpool, but also having the consideration of these huge potential semi-finals. I mean, similarly, the quarter-finals are going to be distracting enough, but if they're facing each other in a semi, I think even more so that will be kind of helpful to Liverpool in terms of it'll be a big distraction for them, and so Liverpool maybe even will hope that City and Arsenal both get through to that and get through what a tricky quarter-final ties for them, just to add that extra difficult game on and tack that onto the season and make that even more difficult for them. So again, a consideration for City and Arsenal to factor in as they move through the European competition. Liverpool, of course, in the Europa League, but not quite as tricky fixture-wise for them. So hopefully that's something that will go in their favour, or they will certainly hope that anyway. So now, taking a look at the fixtures and how that stands, and as I say, maybe advantage Liverpool on that front, looking quite good for them in terms of their running, certainly on paper at least. We know that football is actually played on grass, so we'll see how that actually pans out. But I think another interesting factor to look at as well is how do these managers cope in these periods of immense pressure. Now, obviously, this is the period where, you know, all the pressure is on, as I say, that you know, Arteta, Guardiola and Klopp will know that they've got, they've got to get these wins together. They know that the pressure is massively on, and that this is the most difficult period of the season almost if you are in a title race, and because you know that any drop points could potentially be disastrous. So it's a real pressure period of the season. And I think it's interesting to know how that affects the managers, how they've previously coped with that. And I think it makes for really interesting reading, actually. I'll pop the graphic up now and you have a look at it. And I think, again, looking like on the surface, slightly advantage to Liverpool for this one. Now, you look over the final 10 games of the past 4 seasons, and I've worked out an average for that at the end. Now, I'll start with Arteta because he has got quite clearly the poorest record in that regard while he's been at Arsenal. 16, 20, 15 and 15 points picked up in the final 10 games of his 4 seasons at Arsenal there, with an average of 16.5 points, so not a great average for him. And you think, last season when Arsenal kind of collapsed, didn't they, a little bit, fell apart in that final part of the season and allowed Manchester City to really romp away with it. They're just picking up 15 points from the final 10 games. There's a big factor in that, and that made it really easy for Manchester City to go on and win the title. I know they blamed, it's been mentioned as a factor that injuries were part to that, losing Saliba in the final part of the season. But that's still a pretty poor collection of points they got in those final 10 games. And again, they haven't particularly finished that strongly under Arteta, so he's going to have to really buck the trend and hope that Arsenal, up against what is on paper the toughest fixture list of any of the 3 title contenders, that he can get a winning finish to the season, because that's not been something he's been particularly strong in. Now, we know Guardiola generally has, because he's been in a lot of title races with Liverpool that he's ended up winning. And I mean, the points totals really bear that out. 24, 21, 24 and 25. So his sides really start picking up steam, don't they, at this time of the season? And no surprise that his average there is 23.5 out of a possible 30 points in this stage of the season. That is really impressive and shows that, again, Manchester City, even if they've got maybe slightly trickier fixtures than Liverpool, they're definitely going to be a factor in this part of the season, because they always are. The manager always gets them ahead of steam up, building up into this part of the season, and they will finish strongly. But I think, again, another crucial factor here, you look at Liverpool, and they look on paper to have the strongest finish of anyone under Jurgen Klopp. And you look at the finishes there, 20, 26, 26 and 24 for an average of 24 points from 30 over this period of the season. So even stronger than Guardiola's record, which is pretty remarkable. And I also think it's worth mentioning that some of these seasons have been absolute disasters for Liverpool. 19-20, they only just sneak into the top 4 because of that strong finish they make. And then obviously last season again, they did miss out on the top 4, but they had a really strong finish despite most of the season going really, really poorly for Liverpool. So again, that is something to factor in, is that Jurgen Klopp typically finishes seasons well. And if you can do that again this season, and Liverpool, maybe if they can get control of the title race going into this next weekend, then maybe Liverpool can make themselves favourites on the basis of Klopp's ability to finish seasons strongly. Now, it's interesting actually that his average there of 24 points would put Liverpool on a points total finishing the season of 88. So, we're so used to these 90-odd points totals, haven't we, from Liverpool when they've been in title races recently. But actually, if they were to get 24, which is Klopp's average, and finish on 88, it would have actually only won you the Premier League once in the last 7 seasons, and that would have been the 2021 season when Liverpool fell away completely and Manchester City won it a canter really behind closed doors, and so they didn't really need to go over the 90 points total. So it shows you that the demands in terms of the points total, I think it's going to dip under 90. I think it's going to be a rare occasion where it does, but I think it's going to dip under 90 this season. And I think if it does that, then that again favours Liverpool in terms of they can finish that season on Klopp's average, then they're going to finish themselves on 88 points, and I think it really favours them to go on and win the Premier League title. Now, of course, there are multiple other factors that I can't cover in this in terms of injuries is a big one. Liverpool are getting some bodies back, which is great news for them. Arsenal and City not doing too badly in terms of injuries, but it only takes one, as we saw with Saliba missing the back end of last season for Arsenal. One injury in a key position can make it really, really difficult for you. So again, that is a factor. As is luck, which is part of the injuries, I suppose. You need good fortune. You need a last-minute winner to go in off someone's backside sometimes, or you need one to go in off the post, or a penalty claim not going against you maybe, or a bit of luck with VAR. So that's going to be a factor, of course, but it's going to be fascinating to see which way it plays out. As I say, all these things are going to be factors. The fixture list, the injuries, the luck, all these things thrown together, and I think it's going to make for an absolutely fascinating run-in. Now, if you're going to put a gun to my head and say who I'm going to back to win the title, I'm going to take the easy cop out and say I still back Manchester City. They've been in this position so many times and we've seen them go on a run and go and win it. But I think Liverpool have shown they've got a lot of evidence to back them up and show that they should maybe have the strongest run in. Arsenal, maybe they'll surprise us all, and this will be the time that they come together under Arteta and prove that they are finally ready to win that major trophy and really announce themselves. And if they go on and win it from the position they're in and with the fixtures they've got coming up, then you have to say fair play to them. They'll absolutely deserve it. So that's my take on it. Please let me know in the comments what you think. Who do you think is going to go on and win the Premier League title? Has any of the evidence I presented to you today, has that shifted your thinking on it? Do let me know what you think in the comments. As ever, going to ask if you can like and subscribe. It's always helpful to grow the channel. Great to have new people on board if you're enjoying the videos I'm providing. And I'll be back for the build-up to Brighton, which is coming up in the next few days. And of course, the start of an absolutely thrilling run-in for the Premier League title race. See you soon.